Whenever somebody do that, you just say must.
But Moss is more like going over the top of the guy, right?
No.
This is extending to the back. Go ahead.
Moss is anything that's dynamic. Moss. It's funny. It was Moss ever since I was in the league, man. Moss.
Sticking with college football, trick play in the Holiday Bowl. Northwestern offensive lineman Trey Clark catches the pass, dives across the goal line. Watch it again for the 20-yard touchdown. Here you go.
We call that a business decision. That DB was like, I want no smoke. I want no smoke.
That reminded me of what the Patriots pulled out in the playoffs against the Ravens years ago, that the Ravens were saying that was cheating on, where they have the guy eligible out to the side. You don't think he's eligible? Look at that. Batman touchdown.
And then he has a 39, so it's difficult. I thought that was Jared Lorenzen running down for a route.
On to the NBA. Magic Hornets second-year guard Malik Monk takes off.
Levitation.
Oh, my. I didn't see this last night. Now, Malik Monk, I thought he'd be better already. I thought he was a steal they got in last year's draft. His rookie year didn't go quite according to plan, but look at that.
I used to jump like that in the 90s, man.
You could never jump like that, Bart.
Mavs Thunder, Russell Westbrook throws the alley-oop to Jeremy Grant, one of Westbrook's 11 assists last night.
Really good win by the Thunder last night. Dominated this game start to finish. Hey, Bart, do you know where Jeremy Grant went to college?
No, but I hated his dad, his uncle.
Oh, Horace and Harvey?
I'm a bad boy Pistons fan, so I hate him.
Oh, okay. The answer, by the way, is went to Syracuse, like so many great NBA players. Go get it, Jeremy Grant.
Moving on to the Eagles, let's talk some football again. And the most popular backup quarterback in the league, Nick Foles. He did win their last 3 games, and he did get them into the playoffs. And while Carson Wentz still hasn't been ruled out for the postseason, some are wondering if Philly should stick with Nick. We wonder that every day. Doug Peterson was asked about this yesterday.
Isn't it fair to say or safe to say that Nick's going to be a quarterback as long as you win?
For this week.
I mean, is there any scenario?
There's no guarantee we're going to win this game.
I understand. I'm just saying if. You know.
Yeah, I'll evaluate next Monday.
You already this.
Yeah,
right.
I know. Thanks for trying.
They did try. You know me. You know how I feel about my local media. They almost got it from him. Bart, what do you think? Should the Eagles stick with Foles, or you go back to Wentz as soon as he's cleared to play?
You stick with what's working. You know, the reason that they're on this run has been because Nick Foles was inserted into the starting lineup. Like I said before, he energizes this team. He puts this, this offense in a rhythm and a pace, and they have chemistry. Him and Doug Peterson has some type of chemistry where he understands how to get the best out of Nick Foles. The offense, Alshon Jeffries. The only person that's probably upset is Ertz because he was getting all that work when it was Wentz. But now everybody's alive. Everybody, it's run the ball, shots. And, whenever you do that, you have an opportunity to get these big explosive plays. The time of possession, they're controlling everything. If he's able to put this team on a run, and like I said, they don't have to go to the Super Bowl. You have real legitimate questions about who's the best quarterback for this team going forward.
Well, when we talk about the best quarterback for this team, it reminds me of something Chris says all the time about players. Says 99% of guys in this league are system players. Well, let's just look at that the other way around. What teams are system fits for certain players better than others? I'm not ready to say that with Philly yet. I'm not. I know that they are on another seemingly magical run, but it's not as if with Carson Wentz we haven't seen them be great. We saw them be great, the best team in football for the first 13 games of last year. We saw this year, while the team as a whole struggled, Carson's numbers were actually quite good. His numbers this year are actually comparable to what they were last year pre-injury. But as far as for the rest of this season, Nick Foles is the only quarterback who should play for the Philadelphia Eagles, and that's also for Carson Wentz's benefit. The worst thing that can happen to Carson Wentz is the Eagles upset the Bears, which is the only way this is a discussion, right? Because we know Foles playing this week.
And then he's healthy.
And then they're like, hey, Carson, guess what? You get to play on the road against the #1 seed New Orleans Saints. And that game, the Eagles, if they are to get past the Bears, which is a long shot, no matter who the quarterback is, they are an enormous underdog. They will be a greater than touchdown underdog in New Orleans, no matter who. New Orleans is the overwhelming favorite, not only to get to the Super Bowl, but to win it.
And it hurts Wentz if they lose to the Saints.
If they lose under his watch.
Yeah.
If Foles gets to stay undefeated in these must-win games, what Carson Wentz needs to happen to have all of this go away is for Nick Foles to lose a playoff game. Like, I mean, that is because, yes, of course, well, if Carson takes over and they go win a Super Bowl, is that the best? Sure. But this team, I don't believe, is good enough to win 3 consecutive road playoff games, no matter who the quarterback is. So the worst thing that could happen to Wentz and his future in Philly is to get put back in that starting lineup.
But if Nick Foles plays well and they lose, the questions are still going to be there that maybe, because they have to make a decision, because I believe his cap hit is like $20 million.
It's a $20 million team option.
So they're going to let Nick Foles walk away. And then if he goes somewhere and thrives, and Carson Wentz can never get them back to the dance, and they're going to say, what if? Because he's a 29-year-old free agent with experience and a Super Bowl MVP.
So listen, if he plays well and they lose, let's go with that. He being Nick Foles
against the Bears,
or even against, let's say they beat the Bears, even against the Saints. Either way, they will let him walk because they've got no choice. Right. Like, they're not going to pick up a $20 million option. They are cap strapped as is. This Eagles team does not have a lot of room to maneuver. That's without his $20 million option. And then even if there are people on television, even if there are fans like, did we keep the wrong guy? It's not the same because he's not in the locker room anymore. There's not going to be the question if they struggle to start next year, should you go to Foles? Because he's going to be playing for Jacksonville or Denver or whomever the hell he's going to be playing for. So this will fix itself. It will figure itself out. The only way it doesn't is if it figures itself out in a different direction, which is they beat the Bears and they beat the Saints, and then there is a real question about which quarterback do you move on from. But we are, to me, a ways away from that, Bart.
I know you're saying he's not a system guy, but somehow Alshon Jeffrey plays better with him, and Nelson Aguilar plays better with him, and he seems to work under the Doug Peterson tutelage of how he wants to run that offense better with Nick Foles. So if you take him out of it, do you have to change all of that and the coaching staff's direction to bring Carson Wentz back in and make him successful, or do you keep everything the way it is with Foles?
I think when Carson Wentz comes in, I think they need to scale him back a little bit, because I feel like they thought that he was going to be able to pick up where he left off at that MVP form, and that just wasn't the case. He had a bit of I want to say a sophomore slump, but all things weren't equal. They didn't have the same pieces they had before. I think losing Jay Ajayi really hurt Carson Wentz and what he was able to do. He's a totally different quarterback. He's more mobile. He's a guy that can buy time outside of the pocket, make those off-schedule plays. Something that Nick Foles really doesn't do. He's more of a rhythm passer, a rhythm thrower. That back foot hits, and he's going to make a decision with the football. I feel like coming back, they're going to have to make some decisions and try and tweak this lineup, but they don't have a lot of flexibility because they have a lot of guys that's going to be pending. They have a lot of high-priced free agents. They got to make a decision. Peters is a Hall of Famer, but they instead of let him go to get some type of salary cap relief, they paid him some more. So they're going to have to make some decisions going forward. They were all in this year, bringing in Haloti Ngata, bringing in Bennett, so that they can try and make another run. But if they fall short, they're going to have to make some decisions, and Nick Foles is going to be one of them.
I just don't think we should act as if we've never seen this Eagles offense perform at a high level with Carson Wentz. We have. We saw it perform at a high level for 12 and a half games last year under Carson Wentz. The entire team was underachieving for the first 13 games of this season, 2 of which were quarterbacked by Nick Foles. Now, what has happened these last 3 weeks, I love it. Like, I don't have a rooting interest on the NFC side of the bracket, but the most interesting thing is the Eagles keep winning. I root for, it's a steal line from Colin Cowherd, I root for interesting. Like, the most interesting thing is that we get a Drew Brees, Nick Foles matchup in the Superdome in New Orleans, and we see what happens. And if that does come to pass, then you do have to start asking really tough questions, and we're not even mentioning, even if Wentz is better, how much of an injury risk is a guy who was injured his last year in college, who had a massive leg injury last season, and is dealing with a back injury now? But if this goes the way Vegas says it's going to go, which is the Bears win this game by about a touchdown, then you know who you go with? The bigger, stronger, faster, more athletic, stronger
Your
arm,
franchise
number
guy.
2 overall pick.
Gave him a lot for him.
Right, and by the way, this could work out great for Nick Foles. He has an option. He will be. He saw how Teddy Bridgewater played in Week 17. We don't know what if Flacco's getting cut, is he gonna what the market for him will be. Nick Foles might get his own team next year and see if this magic is transferable.
Quickly, who do you think the players in that locker room would like to quarterback their team on Sunday?
I think they like Wentz, but I think they love Nick Foles. I think he's just a guy that you root for everything that I hear, that he's a leader, he's fun to be around, and you root for guys. Yeah, everybody loves the underdog.
I think the guys in the locker room know Wentz is better. I think the guys in the locker room would be furious if Nick Foles got benched during this run. I think there is the feeling of run with the hot hand.
Yeah.
Go with what's working. Like, to cross sports just for a moment, it's like there are sometimes NBA teams go on a run in a fourth quarter with their best player on the bench. Everyone knows the best player's on the bench, but you don't want to upset the rhythm of what's going on. To take that to just week to week with the playoffs, and they know the stage isn't going to be too big next week or the week after for Nick Foles. One of the question marks for Carson Wentz, as is the case with Mahomes, with Watson, with Trubisky, is playoff experience. He doesn't have any. We know the stage won't be too big for Foles.
All right, we got to take a break. Coming up, who's more important to the Cowboys' playoff success? Is it Dak? Is it Zeke? What are they going to have to do to